Hi everybody, this is Handsome Aaron here, and I just watched Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It's a movie that I have not seen in nearly 20 years now, but I recently got access to Google Plus for free. When you're as charming as I am, you can get access to a lot of stuff for free. So I just got it, and the first thing I decided to watch on it was the Phantom Menace. And as I did, I noticed a lot of things. I got thinking about a lot of things. So many that I got a piece of paper and I just started writing down like thoughts that popped into my head as I watched it. And I could really just use a distraction from stuff happening in my life right now. So I thought I could kill about an hour or so by just recording myself. Ooh, let me adjust my camera here a bit. And putting my thoughts out onto the internet to be a drop in the ocean of YouTube. So that's all this is. This isn't like a super late, 20-year late review or me breaking down some kind of meaning or anything like that. This is just me rewatching an old movie and just noticing things. Most of them are going to be very nitpicky, little tiny things that don't matter. Starting with the very first thing I noticed about the movie actually happened before the movie starts. So there's a thing with the movie that other people have already pointed out, that the opening text crawl, the Star Wars classic text crawl, is incorrect. It describes both Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn as Jedi Knights, when really only Qui-Gon Jinn is a Jedi Knight, Obi-Wan is his apprentice, his Padawan. Other people have already pointed that out, but if you go and watch it on Disney Plus, like I do, there's like a sentence-long synopsis of the movie before you select it, and it also gets it wrong. In that one sentence, it says 2 Jedi Knights. So 20 years on, they're still fucking that up. They refuse to accept just that that's not what happens in the movie. Disney refuses to accept as much as George Lucas. So once the movie got going, an overall thing about the movie is that I saw it when I was a kid. I would have been like 5 when the movie came out. So I watched it as a little kid. I didn't really remember it. The only part I really remembered was the pod race, kind of, and the parts where they're running around at the end, where the one team is in the palace and there's the battle, and there's the space battle, and they're fighting Darth Maul. I kind of remembered all that, and all the rest of it was just a blank. And as the movie went on, I realized it's not because it's been so long since I've seen it, because I've seen other movies a long time ago that I still remember pretty well. It is that The Phantom Menace, shockingly, my opinion is that The Phantom Menace is not a very good movie. It's incredible how boring a lot of it is, and how incomprehensible a lot of the plot is. I would be shocked if, when I was a kid, I understood what the plot was, because now as an adult, I don't really get what was going on in the movie. And it's not because it's so complicated, it's because there's huge swaths of important information that they just do not tell you. We'll get more specific with those things, I guess, in a bit, because I have a lot of notes here. My next... Okay, so... God, it's twice with the opening text crawl. I have 2 notes just relating to that, the Disney Plus thing, and then I just wrote down the direct quote. The direct quote in the opening text crawl of just, "The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute." For a space adventure movie, that's the big clincher that's supposed to get you on board for this journey you're about to go on, is that the taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. They thought that is the second sentence. You see the word Star Wars, you hear, I think it's like the galaxy is in turmoil, and then that. And yeah, that's basically how the movie progresses from there. That level of excitement and engagement in the plot. So then the actual movie starts. I just put down Star Trek view screen. That's something that was weird to me. When they're approaching... I'm not going to use clips, I should say that now. I'm not going to edit this or anything like that. I'm just going to talk to the camera and then vomit this up onto the internet. So if you want to know what I'm talking about, you can go watch the movie yourself, like with the knowledge of what I'm saying, I guess. I'm going to guess you've seen the movie if you're watching this. But this starts with them flying towards the Trade Federation command ship, I guess, and they have these, like, Star Trek view screens where they're, like, being recorded and talking to it. And I don't remember anything like that. It just stood out to me as being odd, rather than them just talking through a radio. Why do they have these? Then they get on the thing. I'm just going to go chronologically from here, by the way. Just through the whole movie. Get ready, because I think this is going to take, like, the same length of the movie. Just to get rid of... Just to go through all these just little thoughts. They're not complaints, necessarily. Just little thoughts. There are these spider robots when they get in to the ship. There's the battle droids. And then there's these, like, spider robots walking around. And I think later, at the ending, I think... it's established that those are their spaceship, like the spiders turn into spaceships and fly out and protect the thing during the final fight. But it's not established that that's what those are until way at the end, and I don't think you ever actually see them do that. I think the ships just kind of looked like those spiders that were walking around, and they never do anything else, so I think it's just sort of it's just sort of odd the way that it's handled with those spider robots that are walking around. Then they walk in, and there's a protocol droid. I should say this. They never call it a protocol droid, but it's the same droid as C-3PO, and the original trilogy I also haven't seen in over a decade. So, I kind of remember it as well. Well, I remember it a lot better. There's the same kind of droid as C-3PO. And it has a woman's voice, which makes a lot of sense to me. Now, today, they didn't know this at the time when they made this movie, but now all robots have women's voices, Siri and Cortana and whatnot. So it made a lot of sense to me that the robots in Star Wars should probably all just have the same woman's voice. Really. But for some reason it thinks that they're a Jedi, that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn are Jedi, and, like, it's right. It's true that they are Jedi. I have no idea why the robot thinks that, though. It never establishes where it got that information. It just greeted them at the door and decided that they were Jedi, and then the owners of the robot also just assume that they're Jedi and continue on. Would have been pretty embarrassing if they tried to kill them in a couple minutes with the poison gas and they weren't Jedi and they did just murder two guys. But actually, in terms of why they kill the Jedi, I have no idea why they do that. It's really strange. They're like afraid of the Jedi. One of the two guys in charge, one of the two whatever they are, the guys running the Trade Federation, is like afraid to go into the same room as the two of them, and it's like, do the Jedi just kill people who go against the government? Why are they so convinced that these people are like an immediate, imminent danger to them? Unless it's just a thing that Jedi will just kill you if they decide, if they want to. Like, he's afraid to even go into the same room as them. He's like, I'm not going in there with two Jedi, send a droid. And it's like, do you think they're gonna just pull out their lightsabers and decapitate you if they don't like what you have to say? Why? It's very strange, and it immediately raises some questions about how the Jedi work. Like, I get that they don't want to negotiate with them, but they act like they're an immediate uh, peril, like when they find out that these are Jedi, and that's very odd. Coffee. Um, well, I wrote a note here. At a certain point, the droidicas, they bring up these robots called droidicas. I never knew what they were called before. I always called them roly polies because I remembered them from when I was a kid, and they were in the Star Wars Battlefront games, which are wonderful. The old ones, not the newer ones. The old Battlefront games are great, but I just called them roly polies. They're called droidicas, and they show up when the Jedi are trying to cut their way in to kill the guys. I guess they are gonna just kill these people. It seems. Um, and the droidicas scare them away, and I just wrote down that the Trade Federation should buy more droidicas, but these do start showing up more often towards the end of the movie, so I guess they took my advice, because those things seem pretty unstoppable. Do you think that there would just be millions of them in the future ones? Maybe there are more of them in the next two movies, I don't remember. Um, so, yeah, so about 10 minutes into the movie, now, at this point, and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn are about to sneak down to the planet, I think, and I just wrote a note here. What the hell is happening? About 10 minutes into the movie, I was completely lost already as to who these... I don't understand what the Trade Federation is. I don't understand... it's incomprehensible what's going on. As far as I can tell, there's some kind of the taxation of trade routes to outline star systems is in dispute. I know that. And for some reason that has caused these people called the Trade Federation, who at times seem like a company of some kind, but other times seem like a nation. They have an army. Later it's established that they have planets that they control. They are like negotiating with people. So they almost seem like a country, and for some reason attacks that's happening has caused them to blockade this random ass planet. And I don't know why. I guess the tax is... It's like the tax is on the import and export of goods to this random-ass planet, Naboo. And so they blockaded it in protest of that, and apparently that's a thing they're legally allowed to do, is to just park a bunch of ships outside of a planet that's a member of this country, the Federation, or the Federation? The Republic, and just kill anyone who tries to come or go. That's a thing I guess they're allowed to do, because they're so concerned with the legality of the invasion later, so I have to assume that it's cool that they're blockading this planet for, like, having a tariff on imports, which is... Not only does none of that make any sense to me, it's also so tedious and stupid. So then they're gonna invade the planet, and I guess the plot is that they're going to invade the planet and make the Queen sign a paper that will remove the tariff, I guess, is what's happening. But it takes so long to even just piece that together, and I'm not sure if that's right, and if it is right, it's so dumb to be the plot of this movie. So, okay. So then they get down to the planet, and they meet Jar Jar Binks, and I'm not going to talk about Jar Jar Binks. I know everyone hates Jar Jar Binks. After I remember thinking, not really getting... Like, I remember Jar Jar Binks being annoying, but until rewatching it this time now, as an adult, I didn't realize just how unbearably annoying he is. But I'm not going to get into him. A lot of people also think he's super racist. I don't remember how he's racist, but I guess he's racist. So, the thing is that Qui-Gon Jinn tackles him, and a tank goes over top of them, and he saves his life. So Jar Jar Binks decides that he owes Qui-Gon Jinn a life debt, which seems weirdly easy to get someone to owe you a life debt. Like, he tackled him and pushed him under a tank. Really, Qui-Gon Jinn was even also saving himself. He was running away from that same tank, and Jar Jar Binks happened to be in his way and tackled him. It just seems odd that, like, you can basically save somebody's life even by sort of almost by accident, and they still owe you a life debt. Because if that's the case, I would even owe somebody a life debt. I once almost fell off a roof and somebody else caught me. And it's like, just like that, I'd owe someone a life debt. Like, they don't have to really try that hard, and apparently you belong to them. After that, you think after the battle at the end, between the battle droids and the Gungan, that like half of the Gungans still alive would probably owe the other half a life debt. Like in a giant crazy battle, there's probably people saving each other's lives all over the place. Like, and just like that, they'd all owe each other life debts. It just seems odd how little, like, if you just technically save their life, you own them. Just carrying around. Yeah. Then they get to the water. Then they go to the underwater city, the Naboo, or they no. What do they call it? Something. I can't remember what he says. That's one of my other notes here. I can't understand what any of the Gungan characters say. Like, as annoying as Jar Jar Binks is, half of why I find him so annoying is that I can't understand him. I can't understand their boss, and I can't understand that, like, captain guy. I can't understand, like, the way they have them talk is so dumb that I just can't understand any of them. Admittedly, Brian Blessed, who is the voice of their leader, I've seen him in other stuff, like British panel shows and stuff, and I have trouble understanding him there as well, so I don't know. But they go to the underwater city, whatever it's called. I think it might be called like Gungan City or something like that. And the Jedi have these water-breathing devices that let them breathe underwater, and it's like, do they just carry those around with them all the time? Were they expecting to have to go to an underwater city? Because they were in space, you know, that's kind of, they live in outer space, but they carry around these devices in their pockets all the time, I guess, just to breathe under the water in case that ever comes up. Yeah, so then there's this weird bit of dialogue when they meet the boss where they're trying to convince the Gungan leaders that it's important to the Gungan what happens to the Naboo. And they're like, you guys are connected, and it's like, when they take control of the surface, they'll take control of you, I think is the exact line that one of them says. And I have no idea why they think that. I have no idea why they think that these cities are connected, because they seem to not like each other or really interact. In fact, the Gungans seem to dislike the Naboo, so you'd think that they would be happy that they're getting their asses kicked by killer robots. And I just have no idea why they would think that they would try to take control of the Gungan. The Gungan don't seem connected to anything that's happening and don't seem to care. So that's just weird. So then they get in a bongo, I think is what they called it, a bada bongo, something like that. Again, I can't understand the Gungans. And there's like a submarine thing, and they enter into this place that feels very much like a video game. Like the underwater level. Admittedly, a couple parts in this just feel like a video game, but and the movie, it kind of looks like a video game too. Like, it's when it's CGI, doesn't look just awful. There are some really bad shots in this movie. One shot in particular, way later, where Darth Maul, like, it's just like a shot of Darth Maul, and he's just like keyed into this background, and it looks so just randomly, because the rest of it looks okay, but that was one shot with Darth Maul that looks so bizarre and like so cheaply done. I don't know why. It's only for a second, but maybe that's why. It's just because they figured, it's only a second. but then just cut the shot. I don't know. What was I saying? Oh yeah, they get in a bongo, and they go to this just giant underwater area where there's all these giant fish monsters. And what's really weird about it is that basically the exact same thing happens twice, directly in a row, like within 2 minutes of each other. They're going along, and a big see again. I'm not going to use clips. If I was trying to make this a better video, I would use clips, but I'm not going to. They're going along, and a big fish comes out, and it like grabs them, and it's swimming away with them, and then this bigger fish monster shows up and eats that thing, and they escape. And then they go along, and like a minute later, the power to their bongo cuts out, and they turn it on, and there's a big fish monster, and it goes after them, and it's gonna get them, and then that exact same bigger fish shows up and eats that fish, and it's just like, it's the exact same thing happens twice, and then they just go away, and they just escape, and the next like scene we see them, they're in the city that they were going to. Thebes, I think it's called, something like that. But it's just so odd. Like they thought that you might have missed it the first time, and it was such a cool concept to have this. It's even, I swear to God, it's even the same bigger fish monster that saves them both times. It's a hungry guy. So, okay. Yeah, so this is where... Now we get back to the actual plot stuff, where the Gungans are invading this planet. Not the Gungans, sorry, the Trade Federation. They're invading Naboo. And I just wrote down in my notes here, this invasion seems like nonsense. I don't understand the goal of this. They're trying to make the Queen, like at gunpoint, sign a treaty to somehow make the invasion of their planet legal. Ooh. Go away, you. Like... And then they think that will give them control over this planet, and then it seems like the only thing they want to do with... I don't know. I don't think I need to explain how bizarre this plot is. Like, even if you could argue in a way that it somehow makes sense, it's still just so weird that this is what they've made the plot about. Because none of it seems to make any sense. I was trying to follow it. Part of me thinks that a kid... Because this movie is clearly more oriented for kids. But I just don't think that a kid would be able to understand what's happening. I can't really understand what's happening, even. Or maybe that's the advantage of it, and why kids might like it, is that they just zone out during all the scenes where, like, stuff isn't happening. And they have the advantage of not trying to even comprehend the plot. I don't know. I mean, I saw this when I was a kid, but I don't remember, like, my reaction to any of this stuff. I think, you know what, that's probably exactly it, is I just stopped paying attention during all these scenes, and I guarantee I never actually understood what the hell was going on when I saw this when I was a child. Oh. Okay, so this is another thing I should show a clip for, but I'm not going to, because I guess I'm just lazy, and I want to get this video out, I suppose. I'm not trying to make, like, a real professional channel here or anything like that. 2 times, Obi-Wan leaps into the air and kicks 2 battle droids, and it's so stupid looking. What would possess him to do that? He kicks 2 robots in the face at the same time. It happens twice. Once when the battle droids are sort of escorting the Queen and her entourage to somewhere, and the Jedi jump down and destroy all the battle droids, and he jumps in there and he kicks them. And then when they go into the hangar to rescue those, to take the ship and rescue those pilots, he does it again. He leaps in the air and he like kicks two battle droids in the face. He's like carrying around a laser sword, and these are robots made of metal. I don't know. It's so stupid. Um. So yeah. The blockade is worthless. That's the next thing that happens. Is they get in the ship and they just run the blockade. Uh. I think everyone knows that that's bizarre, how they just do that. They just run right through it. It turns out it's not that difficult to get through the Federation blockade. They don't do anything special or creative to do it either. I don't know why they wouldn't just fly to the other side of the planet. I don't know. Whatever. Kind of nitpicky, but like it is bizarre how supremely worthless the blue blockade is. Like I'm fine with the protagonist because they have to get off Naboo. You have the planets, the characters do this risky thing to escape. That's fine in terms of like storytelling, but they don't do anything special or clever or even seemingly particularly difficult to do it. They just do it. They just fly right at the ship. The shield goes down for a second, and it looks like they might be in trouble, but then they just fix it and they get by. It doesn't make any sense. It's so weird. You know what else is weird? Is, they send up all these droids. I think they're utility droids is what they're called. R2-D2 is one of them. This is the introduction of R2-D2 into the prequel trilogy here. And I guess he was just on this ship. Not that there's anything wrong with that. He's just a utility droid, just going to be somewhere. But that's kind of the problem. Is he's just a utility droid. There's three others, and they send them up there, and they fix the thing, and then R2-D2 comes back down, and then they thank it, and they keep it around, and it's like really special to them, and they start treating it like kind of like a person. They're like, bring it to the queen, and she thanks it, and she has Padme wash it. The real Padme, the real queen. And that's weird. I'm not going to go into that because I know I've seen other people talk about how weird that is. But what's even weirder about it is that there were also 3 other utility droids that just got blown away in an instant. So it's odd that, not just odd that they are treating this one with so much, like, respect, but also that they don't, if they are doing that, if they're treating this one with, like, respect and kind of like a member of the crew, that they are so completely indifferent to the other 3 that got blown the fuck up. When they're blowing up, too, it's bizarre. They, like, explode. It's actually, I actually kind of like that bit, because there's something oddly, like, violent about the way they explode, and they, like, scream when they do. If you listen, there's, like, a sound effect where they're, like, screaming as they explode. It's odd. But I like how, there's something about the explosions of those that kind of visceral, in a way. So, this is the first time we learned that, like, after that, they cut to the leaders of the Trade Federation, the Viceroy he's called, and the hologram of Palpatine. And they mentioned that there's some kind of bargain between them. Like, he's like, oh, this bargain is, like, not worth it, or something like that, because it's getting crazy, more crazy than they thought it would. And it really raises the question, like, that's when it occurred to me that the relationship between these two is never explained. I have no idea why they're taking orders from Palpatine when Palpatine is like a senator who is secretly a Sith, and these guys are incredibly wealthy, super powerful seeming. They have entire armies of killer robots and like fleets, and it's just never explained what the deal is, what this bargain is, why they're taking orders. But he even calls him like what does he call him? The Viceroy of the Federation even calls him like Master or my Lord or something like that. Like he serves him in some way, and see, I'm gonna rewatch clones and Sith as well is my plan, and maybe it's explained in those future ones, but it's just not even hinted at what the deal is in this one. So I'm gonna keep my eye out for that in the future movies and see if it's ever explained what the fuck is going on with these people, why they're taking orders from Palpatine. I'm also not sure if are we supposed to not know, like, as the audience? It's obvious that Palpatine is this hologram character. It's supposed to be obvious, right? I genuinely didn't know because the movie's not. It so much of it is so wrong. It doesn't inspire a lot of faith. Were we supposed to be unsure as to who this is, or are we supposed to see that it's obviously Palpatine? I don't know. I think we the audience are supposed to know that it's the same guy, but like I said, oh, so then we go back to the ship, and Padme is cleaning the droid, which is weird that Padme is cleaning the droid. Actually, the whole relationship between the fake queen and Padme, and the reveal later that Padme is actually the queen, is odd. I'll talk more about that in a minute. I'll come back to that, but it's weird that Padme uses her real name. She tells Jar Jar Binks her name is Padme, and it's like, well, surely the people of this planet know that the Queen's first name is Padme, and if you're trying to stay hidden and not let anyone know you're the real Queen, it's weird that she would still call herself Padme. It's just a little thing that stuck out to me. If you have a decoy who's there for you to, like, not get killed, have her die instead of you, don't keep using your real name. Oh, then they meet Watto. So I already mentioned Star Trek once here. I'm gonna do it again because I like Star Trek a whole lot. There's just another odd connection I noticed with Star Trek, or popped into my head, was Watto is like this alien that's like very greedy and businesslike and everything, and he's, you know, Ferengi-esque. If you know what the Ferengi are, they're like these greedy, business-obsessed aliens in the Star Trek universe. So that, I mean, that's not the biggest connect. I mean, like that's, you know, there's nothing odd about that. But another just small odd detail that made me think of the Ferengi is that apparently Watto's species can't be affected by the Force, by like Jedi mind tricks, and the Ferengi in Star Trek are established to be immune to psychic things. There are some telepathic beings in Star Trek, and they can't affect Ferengi, so it's just kind of an odd, I don't know, a little, just again, just a random thing that popped into my head, just a little thing I noticed. So then I wrote down, okay, so the kid in Star Trek is I don't know who the actor is. He's not a good actor, but he's a little kid, and I just wanted to point out, he says yippee, and I think that's so funny. Like, yes, the kid is not a great actor, but in the script, his line 3 times throughout the movie is yippee. So what did you expect him to do with the material? He's not a good actor, though. It's some scenes are difficult to watch with him, but it's just like, you know, it's not like the lines are great either. Yippee. I just think that's so funny anytime I hear anyone say yippee. I just wrote down Sebulba here. I don't know why I did that. I don't know what that means. I think I just remembered Sebulba as a kid. I don't know. Then they get a communication from their planet, from Naboo, and it's like the guy, I think that they call the guy the governor later. It's the guy with the white beard. And they get a communication from Naboo, and they're like, oh, it might be a trap, it might not be a trap. But I remember thinking, why are they even debating whether or not it's a trap? Doesn't have to be an incredibly obvious trap, because they established earlier that they knocked out all the communications on the planet. That was part of the problem, was they couldn't get a hold of the Republic because all the communications were knocked out. So if they're getting this communication now, doesn't that mean that it has to be a trap, or the guy would just be trying to get a hold of the Republic? It doesn't make any sense why they're even thinking that it might not be a trap. But what's really weird is that they're like, oh, don't respond to it. It might be a trap. If we respond to it, they'll be able to follow it and figure out that we're here on Tatooine. And then they don't do it. They don't respond to it. It's never established that that's a thing that happens. But then a few scenes later, Darth Maul just knows that they're on Tatooine now anyway. I assumed that was going to be like a sort of a subplot, was them going like, all right, who called Naboo? Who like responded to who was using the messaging system? It's somebody. Maybe that bodyguard character, the Queen's bodyguard, like head of her security, would be like, "It was me. I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't help." But no, it's just never brought up. Darth Maul just knows that they're on Tatooine, and there's literally no explanation for how he figured that out. It's very strange. How do you? Oh, yeah. So Anakin and his mom are slaves. I remember that. I didn't remember how weird it is that they're slaves, because I have no idea. So there's different kinds of slavery. Not every slavery is like what Americans think of as slavery, and there are forms of slavery where people kind of go off and can like live on their own, and work. But it's really unclear what the kind of slavery here is, because they also, like, I could buy that they're slaves with like legal rights, like that's a thing. There are slaves that are like that. There are slaves that I say there are slaves. There have been slaves throughout history that have relationships, and the nature of their slavery is one that would be almost unrecognizable and very strange, and it almost seems like that's what's going on. But it's also established that they have like bombs planted surgically into their skin, and they'll just explode, and that makes it so confusing. They seem to have enough legal rights to where they have their own private property. Like, Anakin's mom seems to own that house despite being a slave. And later on, Qui-Gon Jinn gives her a bunch of money. Like, I think he says that they like sold the pod that Anakin used in the race, and he gives her a bunch of money. And Anakin says later, like, I'll make sure Mom doesn't sell you to C-3PO. So it's like they own private property. They have that level of legal rights. But they still have bombs planted into their bodies and can just be exploded like that. It's really strange, and I don't think they thought this whole thing through. I also don't get when it was kind of established in that scene where they're talking about them being slaves and the bomb thing, Padme says that, I don't know, it's kind of unclear whether or not Tatooine is a part of the Republic or exists outside of it, because apparently they have slaves even though there are anti-slavery laws, Padme says, and they just straight up won't use Republic credits. That's like a big part of the plot, is that they have money, but Watto won't accept it. So it's like, are they in the Republic or not? If they're not, why did Padme even bring up the Republic's anti-slavery laws? And if they are, why does Watto regard the Republic's currency as completely worthless? It's very... It doesn't make a lot of sense. So... Oh, I just wrote here, why do only Jedi use lightsabers? Anakin says only Jedi use lightsabers, and it does seem to be accurate that only Jedi, and I guess Sith, I guess Darth Maul used a lightsaber. Um, and in the future movies, there are more people with lightsabers, but they're always either like, and it's like, why exactly? I don't really get that because lightsabers seem like an incredibly effective weapon. I get that it would be difficult to learn how to use it, but you'd think that some other people would use it, and not even just as a weapon. At a certain point in the movie, at the beginning, we see Qui-Gon Jinn using his to like melt through a giant metal bulkhead, and it's like, yeah, that just seems like a useful thing to have around if it can do shit like that. I could think of a lot of ways that a lot of people could get use out of something that can cut through literally anything, except laser grids, I guess. Later on, we find out they can't affect these weird laser walls. I don't know. That's not like a real plot hole or anything like that, but it's just like, why do only Jedi you carry these things? They just seem super useful. How did they end up in the Outer Rim? Is Naboo in the Outer Rim? I don't, like, I'm sure the Outer Rim is very established in, like, expanded Star Wars universe rules and laws and stuff. I don't know that much about Star Wars outside of these movies. Actually, even within these movies, I guess I'm so much I forgot. Other than the Knights of the Old Republic games, I loved those Knights of the Old Republic games, and they would talk about the Outer Rim, and it's like the Outer Rim is like lawless and stuff. It's outside. So is Naboo located in the Outer Rim? Because it doesn't seem like it is. It certainly isn't this like lawless place that's like far from the reach of the Republic. It's very much part of the Republic. But they say that Tatooine is in the Outer Rim. So did they fly in the wrong direction after escaping from Naboo? They have some line about how, like, I guess it's like the closest planet that isn't controlled by... Well, and this raises more questions. It's like, they say, not controlled by the Trade Federation. And it's like, wait, the Trade Federation controls multiple worlds? What are they? Like, that they are... That if we go to any of these other planets, we're more likely to run into Trade Federation... Like, do they have armies of killer robots on all these other planets? What the fuck is going on? What is the Trade Federation? I don't understand. Why is it like... And what makes it doubly confusing is that if it is a company, all of the members of it we see are these the same type of alien. So is it like, is the Trade Federation that species? Is it again kind of like the Ferengi, where like they're... I think the Ferengi's government is called like the Trade Feder. It's called like the Alliance or something. I don't know. Is it like their species government is like dominated by a corporation and it's these aliens, or is it a business and they just are comprised of this one type of alien? And if so, are they? They seem to be governed by the Republic, but I don't know. I need more coffee. Qui-Gon Jinn says there's something about this boy, and for a second I thought he was really in love. Hey, if slavery is legal on Tatooine, maybe who knows what he can get away with while he's out there. And then later, almost every line said by Anakin's mom I thought was funny. It's all so weird and just bizarre. She says, at one point while talking to Obi-Wan, not Obi-Wan. Nobody talks to Obi-Wan. Oh, like, really, like, nobody does talk to Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon Jinn's the one doing everything. She says he knows nothing of greed, and I feel like that was supposed to be a line, like to say that Anakin is virtuous. He knows nothing of greed, but it's like, I think most slaves probably do know nothing of greed. Not to be too harsh, but it's an incredibly odd way of establishing that he's, because I'm pretty sure that's all that line is, that he's a good kid. Um, but yeah, for a slave that works in like a junk shop, I don't know how much greed he's going to have. I think he's 9 too. How many 9-year-olds? And then she says he deserves better than a slave's life, and it's like everybody deserves better than a slave's life. That's a meaningless statement. They did not think through the things that she was saying in the specifics. Um, and then I just wrote virgin birth in my notes here. I don't have anything else to say about that. It's weird. It's everyone knows that that's bizarre. I guess I don't. I guess the Force is Anakin's father. It's still weird. I don't even want to talk about it. Um, Along with midichlorians, I also wrote down that there are metachlorians. I don't want to talk about that. We all know that it's weird. Um, Qui-Gon Jinn took Anakin's blood without his knowledge or permission to do weird tests on it. That's a felony. Again, it's a good thing it's on Tatooine, because you'd be going to jail. So then Qui-Gon bets Anakin pod. Qui-Gon also, that's another thing. Qui-Gon's a sketchy guy, because in a couple scenes later, he also then bets Anakin's pod without Anakin's permission or knowledge. He just bets the property of this slave child. It's like, if Anakin does lose this, Qui-Gon Jinn just basically screwed him out of the only thing he really has in the world. But then they get into this weird... Okay, so there's a scene where Qui-Gon Jinn and Watto are negotiating this weird bet. Qui-Gon wants to get the slaves, Anakin and his mom. Watto doesn't want to give them both up, so he's like, okay, just the boy. And then there's this really weird thing. It's where Watto pulls out like a die, but it's half the sides are red and half the sides are blue. I think he calls it a chance cube or something like that. And he's like, if it's red, it'll be the boy, and if it's blue, it'll be the mother. And then he rolls it, and it's Anakin, and he's like, gets angry, and he's like, ah, whatever, I don't even care. And then he leaves, and it's like, what was the point of that? Like, oh, Qui-Gon Jinn just didn't want the mom, and Watto didn't have to take the bet at all if he wasn't happy with losing Anakin. And then doing the whole chance cube thing changed nothing, because it just ended up being what Qui-Gon Jinn wanted anyway. So it was just this bizarre little interaction that served no purpose, and just all it did was add in another level of not making any sense. Why would Watto... If Watto doesn't want to lose Anakin, then he just didn't have to take the bet at all. And if Qui-Gon Jinn didn't want Anakin's mom, then he just didn't have to take the bet at all and just say, no, I want the boy. Which clearly Watto was okay with losing, because otherwise he wouldn't have put betting Anakin on the table at all. So it's just this nonsense, tiny little interaction, which Qui-Gon Jinn also uses the Force to make the cube land the way he wants to. So again, it's just Qui-Gon Jinn's kind of a sketchy guy, sketchy manipulative dude who uses the Force in what I would consider to be unethical ways. There should really be police for these Jedi. So this is also where we learned that Anakin is a fucking liar. So in the scene where they're having dinner, Anakin's like, oh, have you heard of pod racing? It's this really dangerous thing. I'm the only human that can do it. And Qui-Gon Jinn's like, oh, you must have exceptional reflexes. Except we find out in this scene with the bet that Anakin has never finished a race before. So what the fuck is he talking about that he's the only human that can do it? He clearly can't do it if he always crashes and has never finished the race, he can't do it. How could he possibly be doing anything that any other human couldn't do if he's never even finished? It's bullshit. It's just lying. It's the story trying to have its cake and eat it too, where it wants to establish that Anakin is special in some way, that he's unique and in touch with the Force. So they're like, oh, he's the only one that can do it, the only human. Because I guess all these other aliens have better reflexes than humans, I guess. But they also want him to be this underdog who does the impossible. So in one scene they establish he's special and has a unique ability to pod race that no other human has. And then in the very next scene, he's terrible at pod racing and should lose, but he does. He wins. Yay! It's nonsense. He's just lying when he tells Qui-Gon Jinn that he's the only human that can pod race, because he just, if he's never finished the race, then he cannot pod race. Anakin can't race. So space. Wait. I can't read my own handwriting on my notes. So I just wrote down how did we even get here? So yeah, so the pod race starts, and the pod race is mostly pretty lame. Oh, that's what I wrote here. The pod race is really weird to me, just as a sport, because it's similar to NASCAR, I guess. I also don't like NASCAR, and I can't imagine sitting at an actual NASCAR rally and watching the whole thing, but you can at least see the cars. And what's weird about this pod racing thing is that there's such a small stretch of this track where you can physically see the pod racers. Like, it's basically only when they're going by the finish line that all these people in the stand can see what the hell is going on. It's established that, like, Qui-Gon Jinn and Padme and stuff, they're up in this elevated box. Okay, looks like I am going to have to do some editing. The camera just kind of cut out on me there. But it's fine, I'm just going to pick up exactly where I left off. So, what was I saying? Yeah, so the pod racing, they're up in a tower, but they have like like an iPad, and they're like watching it, most of it on that. But then everyone else, all the people that are just like in this stand, it doesn't look like they have any kind of screen or anything. They literally just are sitting there waiting, and there's like 10 seconds where they can see the actual racers zooming by. It's not a good spectator sport, but in general, it's just so Tatooine is just so weird. It's like an hour of the movie. It's almost a full half of the movie, and it's just this like random, convoluted side quest that they go on at some point, just to get Anakin, I guess. The whole actual story, everything involving this invasion and Naboo and the Federation, it all just halts for like a solid hour. In the whole middle chunk of the movie is just this, and then it all just culminates in this pod race that's so pointless and just silly, but not even in a super I don't know. The best thing to come out of it, in fact, I think maybe the best thing to come out of the whole movie is just Star Wars Pod Racers on the Nintendo 64. If anyone has ever played that, I loved that game as a kid. I was terrible at it. I never beat it. But, yeah, I mean, at least there's that. But that's the whole thing. The whole pod race feels more like something that exists with the plan to turn it into video games. Like with a couple of things in this movie, it feels more like it was designed to be turned into other media than to make sense within the confines of this film. My next note here. It's another quote just from Anakin's mom that I wrote down. It's just after he wins the race, she just says, "You have brought hope to those that have none." It's just such a weird thing for her to say. It's just such a strange line from Anakin's mom. Everything she says is so weird to me. Uh, so then, so they win the race, and they they're at the ship, and Qui-Gon gets on this weird camel thing, and he says, "I have some business to take care of in town." And Obi-Wan says something like, "Are you gonna go pick up another pathetic life form?" It just feels like such a weird line from Obi-Wan to just describe things as pathetic life forms. I assume he's referring to Jar Jar Binks, but even for Jar Jar Binks, that's such an odd way for Obi-Wan to refer to them. I don't know, it just stood out to me. So then, okay, so this is the next thing. When they make this initial bet, Qui-Gon Jinn wanted Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon Jinn wanted Anakin Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker's mom. And he was betting the pod to get yeah. And Watto basically came to the conclusion that the pod was potentially worth a slave, but not both. So they make this bet, and Qui-Gon Jinn settles for just freeing Anakin's mom. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. But then when the race is over, it's established that Watto bet everything to win back... bet everything on Sebulba and lost. So he's broke. He straight up says, "I've lost everything." Which means he's probably pretty desperate for money. And then after the race, Qui-Gon Jinn sells Anakin's pod and for like a bunch of cash. You couldn't go back to Watto and try to buy Anakin's mom now that like he doesn't try to free Anakin's mom after this, even though the situation's completely changed, and it feels like he absolutely could. Yeah, that's something I never thought about till I just rewatched this here. There is no reason that that Qui-Gon Jinn could not have also gotten Anakin's mom now that the race was over and Watto was completely financially fucked. And after selling the pod, Qui-Gon Jinn had cash to spare. They didn't think it through at all. Like, yeah, Anakin's mom did not have to continue to be a slave and be there. I think that's very funny. Also, after freeing Anakin, like, he does kind of... Qui-Gon Jinn does kind of ask for permission to take Anakin and train him as a Jedi, but there's an odd element to the scene and the way they talk where Qui-Gon Jinn does just kind of treat it as a foregone conclusion, even before talking to them, that he was just going to take Anakin and raise him as a Jedi. Which I guess seems like a better life for him than he already had. But it just, there's a funny kind of element to it where Qui-Gon Jinn just treats it as a given. Oh, okay. So then after that, that scene ends, and we cut to the next scene, and I swear, I have no way to know this other than I just watched the movie, and this is the vibe I get from it. But it seems like there's like a cut scene in between them leaving the house and them running away from Darth Maul, because when it cuts back to them, Qui-Gon Jinn had like 2 camels when he left the ship to go back to the city to get Anakin, and he no longer has them in this next scene, and him and Qui-Gon Jinn are just like sprinting through the desert. Like, there's no explanation for it. They're just before Darth Maul even shows up, they're already like running through the desert, and Anakin is even complaining about how he's tired. And then Darth Maul comes riding in on his speeder thing, And Qui-Gon Jinn immediately is like in fight mode, and it feels almost like there's a cut scene where they were already attacked by Darth Maul and were now trying to escape from him. But that's not there. Go watch the movie if you're not sure what I'm talking about, and just watch it with this in mind, that it feels like they're already supposed to be trying to escape from him, even though at this point they don't know he exists. It's odd. I am curious to know if there really is a cut scene where they encounter him while they're like in the town or something like that. So but this raises the question of Darth Maul shows up, he attacks Qui-Gon Jinn. One, oddly, he doesn't use his double-ended lightsaber in this fight. He just is using the one end of it, but the thing he's got is really big. So I think it is supposed to be his double-ended lightsaber, except you can see the bottom of it. He holds it in a certain way, and you can see the bottom, and it doesn't have... It's not like a hole at the bottom for the other lightsaber to come out. It's a solid metal thing there. So I don't know what the deal is with that. But more importantly, that's just like a nitpicky kind of like thing. I don't even know. I might not even be right about that. It might be that if you look, it is the double-ended lightsaber. Or maybe it's just a big handle on that lightsaber, and it's not supposed to be his double-sided lightsaber. I don't know. But it kind of raised a question for me of why Qui-Gon Jinn is so desperate to escape from this guy. Like, I get him wanting to get Anakin to safety, but why is he just trying to escape from Darth Maul there instead of, like, Obi-Wan coming out of the ship and the two of them just killing Darth Maul there in the desert? It's weird that he's trying to, like, desperately escape from Darth Maul rather than just deal with him. And actually, this is what brought up another thing about it, is I was thinking, why doesn't Obi-Wan come out and help him? And then I thought, why doesn't anyone come out and help him? And I remember that when they escaped from Naboo, they had like 40 dudes with them. They had that whole room full of pilots, and then all of Amidala's like security guard people. And so supposedly there's like a small, like not like an army, but there must be like a huge bunch of people on that ship who just completely disappear after the scene where they escape Naboo together. But like, not only should Obi-Wan be on that ship and be able to come out and just help him murder Darth Maul right here in the desert, but there should be like like dozens and dozens of soldiers and pilots in there. It's like these security guards and the pilots as well. They should have just murdered Darth Maul in the desert. I don't know why they were trying to run away from him. So yeah, okay. So after that, it cuts back to the other guys, and again, I thought it was weird that I mentioned this earlier already, that Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan try to convince the Naboo that the droids are the enemy of the Gungans as well as the Naboo. And I was like, that's ridiculous. Why do they think that? But apparently, the movie just thinks that too. Because the battle droids and the Trade Federation, there's a scene where they're like, oh, we'll go find these hidden Gungan cities and destroy them. And it's like, why? There is no logic given for why it is that they even care about acknowledging the Naboo. Not the Naboo, the Gungan. The Gungan are just sitting at the bottom of that like ocean, just minding their own business. There's just no logic to the reasoning of why they've decided to just go to war with the Gungans too. So yeah, I guess Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn were right, but there's no good reason for why they were right. Yeah, just something that's bothered me. So then they go to meet with Palpatine and on Coruscant. They get to Coruscant, which Coruscant itself is just such a weird looking city in this movie. it's like trying to, it's, yeah, it's just a completely, I don't know, it just looks wrong. All these locations look wrong. Naboo looks wrong. Naboo, the actual Naboo, the people, the humans that live there are called the Naboo. I think their capital city is Thebes. It just looks wrong, and it's just like a building in the middle of a grassy meadow. But then they get to Coruscant, and Coruscant is like, I don't know. Um, oh, you know what I would like to know is if this movie came out before or after. I'm gonna look it up real quick. Here, we're all just gonna, cause I want to know. Uh, This movie came out in 1999. When did Knights of the Old Republic come out? Because there's a city in Knights of the Old Republic called Taurus, and it's like the same thing. And I'm wondering which one came first. They like look in the logic of like a planet-sized. Taurus, Knights of the Old Republic. When did it come out? Come on. Come on. Load. Should have looked this up beforehand, or not at all. 2003. Okay, so Taurus, I guess, is well, at least Taurus seems a lot like Coruscant. So anyway, yeah, it just doesn't look right in this movie. Seriously, so Palpatine. So this is just weird. This is something that just occurred to me, and it's just so odd. So Naboo is like this weird, peaceful city planet. Uh, they don't have a military. They just live in this random, kind of European futuristic city in the middle of a grassy meadow. But like a Palpatine is a Naboo. Because Palpatine's the Emperor. Palpatine goes on to be like this super mega evil being, like the master of all evil in this universe. He's the Emperor, and then he's in Episode 9. He comes back, and he's this crazy, over the top Sith Lord thing, and it's just so weird to think that apparently he's from Naboo. Like, when did he get into being a Sith living on Naboo? It's just so strange. And he's their senator. He's their representative. And he's just like secretly the most evil being in the universe. It's just so odd concept. That's the thing about all these movies, I think. And if I make more of these videos, we'll really get into how odd it is when you think of all these movies as actually being in the same universe. To think that the guy in like Episode 6, sitting on his throne and cackling and shooting lightning, is from the same time period and the same universe even, and especially the same planet as these events, they just don't fit together. Yeah. So then so then they go before the Jedi Council. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, they go before the Jedi Council, and they talk about what happened with Darth Maul. And Qui-Gon Jinn is immediately like, I think that guy was a Sith. And I'm just thinking, why did he jump to that conclusion? That's an insane conclusion to jump to, given that they say, like, the very next line is that the Sith have been just dead for a millennia. That's a long time. That's 1,000 years that these people have been exterminated from the face of the galaxy. And Qui-Gon Jinn jumps to the conclusion that it is the Sith in an instant. Why would you even consider it a possibility that the people that have been dead for 1,000 years just attacked you? What on earth? What? God. See, I don't even know. I was going to give an example of some group that existed 1,000 years ago, and I can't even think of one. And that's the point. To even be aware of something, like, I get that the Jedi fight. Well, they don't fight the Sith. Apparently, they won that fight 1,000 years ago. It's so bizarre that they would even remember what the Sith are in any kind of detail. Let alone just like a guy with a lightsaber. Oh my god, a Sith! Like, he didn't even use the Force in their fight in any explicit way. He's just good with a lightsaber. I don't know. It's so weird, and like later in the movie, I guess Yoda. See, even Yoda isn't 1,000 years old. He's like 800 or something like that. The Sith were dead before Yoda was even born. So the level of detail that they know about these guys, the fact that they consider it at all alarming or even a possibility at this point that they're fighting Sith is they just threw in that the Sith have been gone for a millennia, and they didn't really think about the implications of what a millennia really is. So, why jump to the conclusion? Oh, another thing I just noticed though is when they're in the Jedi Council chamber, all the Jedi masters, they all have their own chairs. Each one of their chairs is like fitted differently, and it seems like each one of them got to just like design their own chairs, and that just seems nice. That's a nice perk of being a Jedi Master, I guess. You get these really nice, comfortable-looking custom chairs. I don't know. Each one was like totally different to fit to their bodies. I would like that. I would like to have one of those. So then okay, so this raised the question even more. So then they have this ridiculous scene where they're in this big council chamber. It's like they're the main building where all the politics happens, with all these big floating pods all over the place, and a big floating pod in the middle, and all the senators are there. And the Trade Federation has senators. Like, they're not even just people who represent the company, like almost like lawyers or PR people. They're referred to as senators. And that just further confuses what the fuck the Trade Federation is. And it's so weird that they would be so dismissive of a queen from a one of their members showing up and saying, my planet has been invaded. And everyone to be like, I don't know. I guess the whole point of the movie is that their democracy is like slow and corrupt and broken and inefficient and bureaucratic. But like an invasion of an entire planet, and they meet it with just this sort of like, we'll look into it attitude. I don't know. It's odd. I get that that's kind of the point of what they're doing, but I guess with a lot of this movie, it's like some of it is plot holes, and what isn't plot holes is just stupid. Even if you can't explain it. It's just dumb. This is another quote I wrote down, another great line. While in the council chamber, somebody says, will you defer your motion to allow a commission to determine the validity of your accusations? That is a line in a movie that seems to be marketed primarily for children and is a space adventure film with robots and war and magic and everything. Will you defer your motion to allow a commission to determine the validity of your accusation? It's just as catchy as any other line in Star Wars. May the Force be with you. It's just as catchy. So then the council says to Qui-Gon Jinn, hey, don't train this kid. And then Qui-Gon's like, I'm going to train this kid anyway. He's really weirdly insistent. He gets it into his head that Anakin's important and insists on training him and everything. And so the thing is that we as an audience know how bad of an idea that is. Like, that it is incredibly stupid of him to train Anakin. So it's just sort of odd that Qui-Gon Jinn, like, is framed for basically as our hero of this movie. And as I've already gone over, he's incredibly ethically dubious at best. He's very much a ends justify the means kind of guy. But we also know the big thing that he's campaigning for in this movie um, is going to get fuck everybody. I know it more than audience is would have known it at the time, um, because I'm even though it's been a long time since I've seen 2 and 3, I know what happens in episode 2 and episode 3. So I know the specifics of it, but everyone watching this would have known that Anakin becomes Darth Vader, and he's gonna fuck up a lot of people and do up a lot of bad stuff. So it's weird that it's treated. Yeah, this movie treats Anakin in an odd way. You're kind of supposed to be rooting for him, I guess, because he's like a kid and he is marginally trying to help the good guys here. But like, we know the whole time what happens here. So why should we feel good about anything that happens with him? It doesn't make any. It's a weird. Yeah, it's weird. Qui-Gon Jinn not only just comes off as like stubborn and obsessed with this kid for like no good reason. We as the audience know that he's making a huge mistake, but the movie wants you to not really think about that, I guess. Yeah. So then they go back to Naboo. Then they go back to Naboo, and for some reason they just send Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan. Even though they're like... They think that this guy's a Sith. They've jumped to that conclusion. Dog. They've jumped to that conclusion that the thing that attacked them on Tatooine was a Sith. And as far as they're concerned, Sith are a big deal. This is very important. We got to deal with it. And they also have a line of dialogue basically saying, we are almost certain that that Sith will be on Naboo. Why do they just send Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan to deal with it? I'm pretty sure earlier in the movie, Mace Windu, Samuel L. Jackson, even says, we'll look into this. We'll figure out, we'll uncover the identity of your attacker. They say something like that. And then it's like, we know where he's going to be. You go do it. We're not going to send any of the masters on the Jedi Council. We're busy sitting in a big circle in this room. We have these really comfy, custom-made chairs, and we don't want to get out of them. That seems to be the motivation for that decision. Metachlorians are stupid. That's my next note. Metachlorians are stupid. Oh, then they go to the... Okay, so they go to the Gungan city, and none of the Gungans are there. We don't see... Jar Jar goes down to the Gungan city, he comes back. They're all gone. They've gone to the sacred... He says something like that. When Gungans are in trouble, we go to this sacred place. And they go there, and I noticed that... The Gungan sacred place seems to be like these old, like, ruins. And for some reason, there's all these big, destroyed, like, statues of human heads. So, is the Gungan sacred place that they go to hide, like, the ruins of a Naboo city? Because why would the Gungans build these statues of human heads? Like, it's gotta have been built by the Naboo. And for some reason, it's the sacred lands of the Gungans. That's just like a weird little detail I noticed. Why was Decoy making decisions? Oh! Yeah, okay, so that brings me to another point. So it's in this scene that we learn that the Padme, the handmaiden, is actually the queen, and the actual queen is just like a decoy bodyguard, and that's fine, I guess. But it raises a couple of questions. One, why was Padme keeping that a secret from her own bodyguards for so long? Like, both the bodyguards in terms of... One, it's unclear whether or not even her security team knew that. I guess you can assume that they did, like her security guards must have, and we're also just keeping the straight. We're never actually told. And if they did know, the guy seemed really unbothered by the fact that the actual queen was going into the dangerous desert city by herself. Not by herself. She was with Qui-Gon Jinn, but it seems weird that he'd be like so unconcerned about that if he knew. But why didn't she tell Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan she's the actual queen? Did she think they were a threat to her? That if they knew she might be in danger? What good did it possibly serve her to keep it a secret from them? When you think that them knowing that, yeah, that this random handmaiden is the actual queen that needs to be protected, will probably help them do their job of protecting her a whole hell of a lot better. But the other thing that's weird about it is that the decoy queen seemed to be making a lot of decisions while pretending to be the queen. Like the whole, even like I remember there's a couple decisions she makes, and it's like, if she's not the actual queen, she shouldn't be making these choices. Even the decision to flee Naboo instead of stay there. The decoy queen is the one that decided to do that. Padme has no input in these decisions until the very end, and then they just drop the facade completely. Yeah, that's the other thing. They pretty much do just drop the facade completely. Again, it's weird. For some reason they make Jar Jar Binks the general. I mean, it's just, I guess, whatever. I don't really care, but at the last minute, on the eve of this battle, even though they have a standing military and they think of Jar Jar Binks as like a buffoon, they just make him the general of the Gungan army at the last minute. I don't know. I don't really care. It's just odd. It's like, you know, it's kind of like the end of Game of Thrones. It's like, we have all these characters and we need to give them something to do, so suddenly, whether it makes sense or not, they're all in positions of like high, they're all in these high positions just so that they can stay in the game of the movie. Because otherwise, you know, Jar Jar Binks, realistically, Jar Jar Binks, if he's going to be part of this army, should have just been cannon fodder. That's what I would use him for. Okay, so then I have a whole chunk of notes here, and they're all just relating to how bizarre and stupid their plan is for this big battle. First I just wrote here, lost and confused. At one point, she says, if we capture the Viceroy, the enemy, they'll be lost and confused without the Viceroy. And it's like, why do you think that? What? They seem to be doing perfectly fine. I don't know if you noticed, the Viceroy doesn't exactly come off as like the Sun Tzu of this army. He's not like leading them into the battle and really specifically coordinating all this stuff. He didn't even seem to know what was going on towards the end there. I do not know why they think that capturing him would affect their like military capability. Why they think they'd be lost and confused with the Viceroy in their custody. And the thing is that line makes no sense, but the concept of capturing the Viceroy didn't have to make no sense. Like, the reason they give for why they're doing it makes no sense. But if they had just said, if we capture the Viceroy, we can force him to, like, surrender, which ultimately seems to be basically what they do. Like, the reason, like, them doing it makes sense. Them capturing the Viceroy and forcing him at gunpoint to end this, kind of the way he was going to force the Queen at gunpoint to do whatever. It's just the reason they give for why they're doing it is what's stupid. The other thing is that they say he's going to... Again, this reminds me of a video game. It's like video game logic, because they like, we have to fight our way to the throne room. And it's like, that's where he'll be. That's where the boss fight is in the throne room. Even though this guy could just go anywhere, he could be anywhere. If he knew that there was a dangerous battle coming up, he might not even be on the surface of the planet anymore. I know I wouldn't be. if I was in charge of this, I would go back up to the control ship. That seems way safer up there. Obviously, that blows up too, but I would have, it blows up for kind of nonsensical reasons. It should not have happened. It should have been way safer up there than on the planet. So, but yeah, it's almost like video game logic. It's like you have to follow through the map and get to the throne room. That's where the guy is that you need to get to and talk to. So, but this brings me to the okay. So, I say the guy's not like the military mastermind behind the droid army. It doesn't really seem like he's in charge in that way. I'm also not a great, not like a military tactician here, but I just want to point out that there is no reason for why the Gungans needed to fight the droid army. The whole point of the Gungan army was to lure the droid army out of the city. And I'm fine with that. The droids were aware of the Gungan army. They're like, we'll go fight them in the field, crush them before they even get close to this city we've made our fortress, which seems to be the only city on Naboo. But once the droid army had pulled out of the city and was on its way to fight the Gungan army, it's like nobody told the Gungans that their job at that point was completed, and they could have just turned around and then gone home. The droids were gone. All their soldiers and all their tanks were out of the city, and the people were infiltrating the palace. That was it. That was all they needed to do. All those thousands of Gungans died fighting that battle, and it was completely pointless. All they had to do was just keep the droid army moving, and if it looked like the droid army was going to turn around and go back to the city, then maybe it looked like they're going to attack them again. Like, they never had to actually just engage them in a fight that they could never possibly win. I just think that's hilarious. That, like, it's like nobody told them that they would lose if they fought, and they didn't have to fight because the people in the sky, if either the people in the sky won, the people blowing up the command center won, or if the viceroy was successfully captured and like forced to surrender, to tell his people to stand down, the droid army would be defeated. Fighting them in the field was never necessary. Okay, yeah, so this is where I want to talk a little bit about the two armies that fight here, too, as well. You got the Gungans, and you have the battle droids. So the Gungans, the thing about the Gungans is, one, they had that army, according to Jar Jar Binks, he says, he has some dialogue, again, I find it difficult to understand Jar Jar Binks, but he says, like, we Gungans have a grand army. We're like proud warriors. And then you see, it's true, they have this like massive military, and it's like, why? Were they fighting the Naboo? And that led me to think, do the Gungans have any say on this planet? Like, they are an intelligent, civilized people, but it seems like the Republic only recognizes the Naboo as the actual citizens and the sovereign government that rules this world, which is kind of fucked up when you think about it. The Gungans seem to almost be treated as like second-class citizens at best in this world. They're separated by choice. They are separated. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're being like ghettoized in these places or anything, but the whole way it's treated, it's like, as far as everyone is concerned, the Naboo, the government of Thebes, I think it's what it's called, the government of this queen, is the legitimate government of this planet, and the Gungans are just sort of also there, and they try not to even acknowledge them. Like, do they get to vote? Did the Gungans vote for Palpatine? Were they ever even asked if they wanted to be able to vote Was there a Naboo, not a Naboo, was there a Gungan potential representative? Obviously, none of these things are addressed, and but there's just like the subtlety. There's just the subtle underlying element of it that just feels like nobody cares about these people. Nobody acknowledges them. I think it's very funny. But then there's the battle droids, and the battle droids are weird too because they are they're not threatening in any way. They like in the original movies, as far as I remember, there's kind of a running joke with the original movies that the stormtroopers aren't threatening either because like they can't aim and they get killed by Ewoks by the end. But that was like an eventual thing that happened, and it's more in the meta of the community. And the stormtroopers still, I think, at least, feel threatening, as they should. But the battle droids don't. The battle droids feel unthreatening, like by design. They're like skinny. They're like really scrawny, and they're like kind of silly looking. They look like, what they feel, they look and they feel like, and the CGI kind of makes them look like toys. They look like little action figure, like that are like too big, and they kind of move in this way that's kind of like toy-like, like with the limbs. And then they have like the way they talk feels very like silly. That's the thing. They feel kind of silly and like non-threatening by design. And it's so weird that that's like the primary enemy of the movie. There's a scene. There's two scenes actually. There's a scene way earlier that I didn't talk about where I was distracted, but it's one of the two scenes where Obi-Wan jumps in the air and kicks the battle droids. But when they're like fighting a bunch of battle droids at one part, Qui-Gon Jinn even like puts his lightsaber away and looks over and like notices that there are two battle droids left and just destroys them with the Force. And he just pushes them over and they die. Like just like that. Oh, actually, speaking of which, that reminds me of something. Like, one, if they're so easily destroyed by just pushing them over with the Force, I don't know why they don't do that all the time, like way more often. In fact, I don't know why they don't use the Force way more often in general. But then actually, I forgot to mention this earlier. Remember when he fought when we fought Darth Maul on Tatooine, and I said it's ridiculous how quickly they jumped to the conclusion that this guy might be a Sith. He didn't even use the Force, as far as I remember, in any like explicit way, Darth Maul, in that fight. So, which just makes it even more baffling that he decided this guy had to be a Sith. Well, or did he? He might have jumped off of his bike. I don't know. But anyway, what was I saying? Yeah. So the battle droids are just so unthreatening, and like it feels like they were that. I just don't get why they decided to do that. There's the part where they're like deploying them all to go fight the Gungans, and it's supposed to feel very intimidating, I think. You see them all and they're like rising and they pull out their guns and they turn over. But these things just feel like toys. They feel like big like action figures just following some kind of like, they're not threatening even when they're marching like that and it's playing music. It's just like, you guys can't have this. And they're like marching to battle in like a desperate struggle against a bunch of like these like swamp people, the main one member of which we see are all like jokes, like Jar Jar Binks and the big one, the leader one that goes they call them the bosses or whatever, but it's like they're desperately struggling like to defeat these things. Although I will say that the swamp people have weirdly inconsistent levels of technology. They seem kind of primitive, but then they also have these giant shield domes and these like electrical ball things are their primary weapon, and it's like do these things specifically destroy battle droids? Why do they have them? Because it seems like it touches the droids and it makes them like circuit out. I don't know. Clearly, the battle droids were designed to be more child-ish, and I guess that's a lot of the movie is like it's so much more oriented for kids. Except at the same time, it's all bored. Like there's lines like will you defer your whatever and trade routes and everything. So I don't know who the movie is for, honestly. Why is Anakin here? Oh yeah, this is when I started thinking to myself. They get into the room with the ships, the bay or whatever, the hangar, and that's when I got thinking. And he's like, Anakin, get to cover. And I got thinking, why is Anakin here in the first place? Why did they not leave him at Coruscant? That's just I'm guessing that's something everybody noticed and thought of is like why did they bring this child here? Oh, this is also the first time to me it genuinely felt kind of like what I think of as Star Wars. There's a moment where I was like, hey, this feels like Star Wars. And it's just, you know, on a very surface level, really. And it's just when they're flying up to fight the ships up to try to destroy the command ship. And that just felt kind of Star Wars-y. You know, that genuinely did remind me of some of the better moments of the Star Wars movies. You know, and it's just like cutting to the different pilots and they're like, you know, checking in, whatever, red fighter 1 or whatever, ready to engage. Lines like that, and, you know, just for like a minute, it's just like, hey, this feels like a real Star Wars movie. Why leave Darth Maul? Guys, Anakin the ship. Oh yeah, then Anakin gets in the ship. This is ridiculous. Anakin, for some reason, when he's told to find cover in the middle of the shootout, decides that the best cover is to climb into one of the fighter crafts that are all that the other pilots are all getting in and taking into space. He decides that's where he'll hide, is in that. And then he gets into a wacky situation. Oh man, where the ship starts going into autopilot and he's figuring it out. It's so crazy, guys. That's all I wrote is just in big letters, just wacky. That's what. Oh, that might be the worst part of the movie. It's just, and for some reason, like it makes no, like he says like the autopilot kicked in. For some reason, the autopilot on the ship will launch the ship and then automatically fly it to this donut ship, and then fly it around for a while in the battle. Before Anakin finally asks R2-D2 to just turn it off. It doesn't. It's so stupid. It's like it's so incredibly desperate to have Anakin blow up this station for some reason, and the movie just does not care how it gets there, and it's trying to be like this thing that's friendly for kids. Yeah. It's that scene in particular, all that stuff with Anakin and the ship, all of it is painful to watch. Oh, okay. So then they're fighting Darth Maul. They fight. What the fuck is this room where they fight Darth Maul? They're in the hangar bay, and then they go into like the next room next to the hangar. And it's this colossally massive place that just goes up and down forever. Just this... It's clearly supposed to be some kind of power room, because another Star Trek reference, all throughout the room are these giant, what look like warp cores from Star Trek. In Star Trek, every ship has these warp cores, and there's big glowing tubes, basically, go to the ceiling of the ground. And that's what these things look like. They're just like 1,000 times bigger, and there's like 8 of them around. But it's like, this room appears to be bigger than the rest of the palace. We see outside shots just moments before when the ships are taking off and taking to the sky of this area that they're in. And you don't see this massive fucking chamber with these giant power and just ramps not ramps, like catwalks with no rails in Star Wars tradition that just fall into the abyss of nothing and go into this. Just they walk through a door and they're suddenly in a different movie. Sorry, I spit on my own screen. It's so ridiculous. Like, what the fuck is this room and where is it? Um, Speaking of things that were so silly they made me laugh is this is that's the most ridiculous part. And see, all these things that are the most whatever of the movie, they all happen here in this final like 20-minute chunk where Anakin flying up in his ship is the hardest stuff to watch. Them going into this room that can't possibly exist is the most bizarre, I guess, moment. But the silliest part of any of these movies is when they're fighting their way to the throne room, because obviously he can only be in the throne room, so they have to get to that throne room. He won't be anywhere else. So they go outside and they shoot these like grapple guns into the roof and just starts pulling them up. And just that shot of them just all standing there with their grapple guns, just being like lifted up, is one of the silliest things I've seen in a long time. I laughed for a good 2 or 3 minutes after that bit where they shoot the grapple guns and all go up to the next floor. Which is almost topped. It also made me start laughing. Just a few minutes later, when they do get to the throne room, and they're captured and they're brought to the throne room, and they're like prisoners there, and then just suddenly out of nowhere, a second team just comes running up out of nowhere and just goes, "Hey, hey!" and shoots it like a battle droid. And it's just this whole hallway full of people. They all just come running up out of nowhere, and the guy says, "Go get them. Go get them," like our, 6 battle droids, and all the battle droids go running out of the room, and this whole hallway of people just sprints off down another hallway. It's just so stupid, and it all happens like that. It's difficult to describe. Go watch the movie again. If this scene has never stood out to you when you've watched it in the past, go watch it again and really soak in how silly it is. Them just running up, and there's like 40 people, and they just to go, "Oh God, I got like 8 battle droids. Let's run away." I don't know. Okay. So then we go back to the fight between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn. And there's this, I'd say famous scene with, there's like this hallway full of these like laser shield walls. I don't know what they're even supposed to be. They don't seem to serve any purpose, but whatever. That's fine. Like, I'm genuinely not complaining about that. There just doesn't seem to be an obvious purpose to what these are even supposed to be. But it's these door things. Obi-Wan gets separated from Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn fights Darth Maul. They get to the end of the thing. They get separated by the doors. I think anyone watching this is definitely going to know it. The thing is, there's 2 things about that as I watched it bugged me. One is after Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul got kind of separated from Obi-Wan, it seems like there was no real rush for why Qui-Gon Jinn couldn't try to regroup with Obi-Wan. Like, obviously they stand the better chance when there's 2 of them. Like, they were struggling against the guy when it was both of them. After he gets separated from Obi-Wan, why doesn't Qui-Gon Jinn kind of take a minute, try to get away from the fight and regroup with Obi-Wan? Instead, he just pushes on. Like, he's the one pressing on Darth Maul, and Darth Maul they end up getting pushed down this hallway. He should have probably waited. But that's fine. What bugged me much more is Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul are fighting, and while fighting, they manage to get all the way to the end of this hallway. Like, Darth Maul's even moving backward and he's kind of pressing on him, but they're, like, moving at the pace you'd expect of two people kind of sword fighting each other. And they get all the way to the end of the hallway. Darth Maul is at the very end. He's in, like, the room at the end of this hallway of lasers. Then the lasers close. Then they open again. And Obi-Wan dead sprints to get to the other side of the lasers. And he doesn't make it. You see what I'm saying? The lasers, for some reason, took their sweet-ass time to close when Darth Maul and Qui-Gon Jinn were fighting in them, until they got to the far end for the right dramatic distance for everybody. And then when I guess when the lasers saw Obi-Wan trying to get to the other side, they just immediately close again. And because of that, Qui-Gon Jinn dies. So, there. That's my thing. The laser walls, their timing seems to be based on narrative convenience. And I just wrote here the fight is lame, and that's true. The fight between Darth Maul, like, people like Darth Maul, and it is for no reason. If you like Darth Maul out there, there's no possible reason for why you like Darth Maul. Darth Maul is a special effects on legs. Darth Maul might as well be Darth Maul might as well just be the name of that lightsaber. The fact that he has a double-ended lightsaber is the only reason anyone could possibly have to like Darth Maul. But it's shocking to me, given that fact, that Darth Maul is kind of popular, and it is just because his cool lightsaber. It's weird to me how lame the fight is between them, especially there at the end between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul. And I think it's just because their movements are so unnatural and so, like, precisely pre-choreographed that they're doing these moves. Like, I remember one part in particular where, like, Obi-Wan kind of swings at Darth Maul's legs and he, like, jumps over it, and then, like, they both do, like, little flips, and then they, like, back off and put their hand, like, Darth Maul puts his hand forward and his lightsaber out, like, behind him, like, ooh. And it's just like, there's something about it that's just incredibly lame, and it is just like the attempts of making the fights like fast paced and yeah, like fast paced and having them do fancy stuff just ends up leaving the whole fight feeling more like a ballet routine, like clearly something that they've rehearsed ahead of time and are just very precisely following the predetermined motions. And in a good fight scene, it really shouldn't feel like that, but that's 100% what this feels like. Again, especially after when it's Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul. It's a little bit less earlier. I didn't get that feeling quite as much. And maybe that's because they had, I don't know why I didn't get that feeling as much with Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul. But when they're outside on the catwalks, it might be because there's a little bit more movement involved in it. It doesn't feel quite as the same. It's quite so like, but when it's just holding on them there in that room and they're just doing these pre-recorded dance move fights, that it ruins it. You can't get into it. What does this mean? The main reactor is accessible from the... Oh, right. So that's the other thing. They say that Anakin flies into the like hangar bay of the enemy ship, and he blows up what they refer to as the main reactor. And I just got thinking, why is the main reactor just sitting there like fully accessible in the hangar bay? Like, it's bizarre that there is anything inside of the hangar of this ship that apparently if you shoot, it'll blow the whole place up. I'm fine with the logic of there being a thing that you can shoot and blow the whole place up. That's like a standard science fiction giant spaceship kind of thing that I'm willing to accept. But it's just like the thing that they shoot is apparently just there. Like, it's just sitting there, and Anakin shoots it on accident after flying inside the bay. Um, so then, and that basically is it. Um, there are these weird Centurion dudes that are hanging out with Palpatine at the end. I think you might have seen glimpses of them earlier in the movie. They stood out to me just because they're very strange looking. They look like Roman centurions, and I don't think they ever show up again in any future movie because they look silly. Uh, they refer to Anakin as the Chosen One, and that's weird. It's not explained in this movie what the hell that even means. They might explain it more in future ones, but it's weird that they would talk about it in this movie and give no real indication of what the hell that means. Chosen, I guess, chosen to bring balance to the Force, but I think this is already going on for a very long time. We'll talk more about how weird the bring balance to the Force thing is in my next video, if I do one. So then they hand the leader of the Gungans one of those glowing balls that you get at Walmart and trick him into thinking it's some kind of great gift, and then the movie ends. So yeah, that's the movie. That is my thoughts on it. I guess one last thought I had I wanted to share is that it's in addition to the plot of this movie being so difficult to get to grasp with because they don't explain so much to you. Like even now, there's all these questions I still have, just information that the movie just does not contain. But even outside of that, see, in a movie, the worst thing that can happen, the worst outcome of it, is like the antagonist gets exactly what they want. But if I understand what the antagonists want in this movie, it's basically just to bring the end to some kind of import-export tariff set on this one planet. Like, worst case scenario is they did kill the Jedi. They kill the Jedi at the beginning. Then they successfully invade the planet. They capture the Queen, and they do force her to sign this treaty. I don't know what happens after that. It's very unclear, and it seems like it cannot possibly be worse than what actually happens in the... Like, in order to prevent that, they go to war. Tons of people die. Thousands of Gungans die in this battle for what seems to be... What the characters themselves even kind of describe. At the beginning of the movie, Qui-Gon Jinn refers to the trade dispute as a trivial matter. And at another point in the movie, I think even Padme says that she doesn't know what will happen next if the Trade Federation gets what they want. Because it doesn't seem like anything that bad would happen. This is in a series where the other movies involved a moon-sized space station that can blow up a planet. And here, it seems like the story is essentially so weirdly small scale. It's that some random corporation invaded some random-ass planet over an import tariff. It doesn't matter in any way. It feels more like... It feels like something that would happen in like Knights of the Old Republic kind of game. This would be like one of the 5 planets that you visit over the course of the game, and this is just like the thing happening on that planet. Because you could do that. I was about to say that if you could condense the plot of the movie down to like 30 minutes, and I realized that it almost is. Again, the whole time on Tatooine has no impact on the actual larger plot of the movie. It's just explaining how they met Anakin. And that's a solid hour of this 2-hour-long movie. It's just that. So the actual plot that's happening, the thing that they're fighting against, the great evil of this, is resolved, introduced and resolved within an hour of the runtime of the movie. I don't know. It's the final thought I had about this. It's but yeah, that's just me having watched Phantom Menace for the first time in like 15 years, at least 15 years, and just some random thoughts I had about it. I kind of enjoy doing this, so I might do it for the other prequel movies as well, just because I haven't seen those in ages, and that'll be fun. If you actually stuck around, I don't think that this is going to be 2 hours long, so there's no way anyone's actually going to watch this whole thing. I wouldn't. But on the rare, tiny chance someone actually does, then thanks. I hope you found at least some of these things that I said kind of interesting. And maybe I'll see you around.